LearningRx in West Des Moines is graduating students who are making amazing progress in life skills, self-esteem, and academics.
One of the things that's difficult for parents to deal with is that a lot of times in the early grades, in grade school, and maybe even early junior high, as the workload becomes significant and difficult for their students, a lot of that can be processed through the family relationship, through extra help in the evenings, and through just discipline. But what happens is that as students move into upper high school, and certainly as they move to college, not all of that workload can be digested because there's not that much time. And so what a student really needs is to increase their core abilities, their ability to process the information more quickly and more fluidly, and that's what we do. And as a result, we're seeing increased self-confidence, increased academic performance, and just lots of neat things happening in students' lives.
When I did my research into what is the background of LearningRx, what you do makes very much sense, which I have a medical background, so therefore the research that came behind it was very appealing to me, and that, you know what, this is probably the thing that's going to help the most, because I'll be honest with you, we have tried everything with Brian. Probably, I'm trying to think, Brian has been in the program now for 3 months. We're about halfway through, a little over 3 months, and Brian is both in the Learning and the Think program, or I should say the Reading and the Think program. Probably the biggest change that we have seen in Brian is that Brian could sit down and write, and this just happened this past weekend because my husband and I were both commenting about it. Brian had to write a book report, and he had to write a 4 to 5 page paper on global warming. If you knew Brian before, Brian could not construct a sentence without somebody constructing it, and you capitalize it, you put a period here. He could not do that on his own. But he read the book, he remembered the book, he sat down and he typed the entire book report by himself, and did basically the entire global warming paper by himself, which was huge, insurmountable for Brian if you knew him before. And so therefore that probably is the biggest hurdle that we've said, you know what, this is it. The learning has made this difference in Brian's life. The other thing, his brother and I, his older brother, were commenting this weekend that, you know, he's seen a big change in Brian because they're both at college, the older two brothers. I said, okay, and how would you do that? He says, well, you know, Mom, he's just more mature. He handles himself better. He's much more confident in what he does. Brian's always had accommodations. He's always had an IEP, always had a 504. Brian's 14. He could take his permit. My other children had their permit. Even actually one had a student permit at age 14, very young. Would I put Brian out there to do that? Absolutely not. And the scary part to me is, how that I help him to learn, to drive, to focus, to do these things? Because as a child, he can't focus on one thing, more or less everything you need to do to get out into the world to function in life. Brian will sit down and do things by himself. Before, when he had homework, and we used to sit at the homework table for 3 to 4 hours a night, it was very long, oftentimes in tears, but Brian will oftentimes sit down and do his homework entirely by himself. It gives him a lot of confidence. I think Diane, his trainer, actually called me one night to comment on how proud Brian was. It was after he had wrote this report, because writing was a huge problem, task, frustration for Brian as to how proud he was, because he told her that he wrote this by himself. We read it, and so that was great to have that feedback and to see that he was confident. Brian has had tutoring pretty much every year of his life as a student in school. He's now in 8th grade, which is a long time, and we have tried numerous different things, different accommodations. Some have helped, don't get me wrong, but not to the extreme that this has. And I think, you know, if we could have done this sooner, would he have not had to be so far behind and not have to catch up as much, but I can't go backwards. So you know what, you weren't here, you're here now, we need to go forward from here, and it's going to be better. And a couple things that I've talked to Brian's teachers out now that I'm in a different school system, nobody knows this and nobody understands it, but it makes so much sense. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you're pushing that brain. It makes total scientific sense. So it's just like, oh my gosh, if you could expand, if you could get into the school system and help them, it would be wonderful. You know, I'd be glad to be a spokesman from you.
Bring your child to LearningRx, where they will be professionally assessed in 7 areas of cognitive skills to pinpoint the cause of their learning difficulties.